hope to, well, I'll do my very best to bring you up to speed on everything that you need to know, regardless of kind of where in the process that you're up to, whether you're just thinking of getting involved with the Golden Visa, perhaps you're halfway through the process, maybe it's something for the future. But we'll be able to go through everything that's involved, the process, the qualification criteria. We'll have a look at the timeline. I'll give you up to date news as to what's been happening in Portugal, and of course some big headlines coming out this month. In particular, of course, the announcement from the government to extend the time to citizenship from 5 years to 10 years, which has caused a lot of panic. Just like I had flashbacks of 2023 when the newspapers had published that the Portugal Golden Visa program had been closed. Yeah, certainly very quick to make some announcements, but similar this time as well. We shall cover that off. Also, some good news for Golden Visa applicants, a new proposal from the government in Portugal to offer some tax incentives for Golden Visa investors, which is good to see. So we'll cover that off as well. We'll look at the latest investment criteria. I'll give you some examples of the types of investments that are out there at the moment that could get you that visa. I'll cover off a few bits around, like I said, on the tax front. It's not the most exciting conversation about tax. No one ever wants to talk about tax. Well, they have to talk about tax, but not something that generally we want to do. But I will cover off what you need on that front as well if you are looking to become tax resident, of course, in Portugal. And yeah, by the time we finish, we've got the hour this afternoon to cover everything that you need to know. You'll see somewhere on your screen a little Q&A box as well. So a little chat box and a question box. Feel free to say hello during the slide. It is, of course, the focus is to get to a live Q&A at the end. Naturally, I'll probably answer the majority of questions before we get to the Q&A. But if there's any particular slides you'd like me to recap on towards the end, please ask, or if anything I've missed, drop any questions in. Feel free to say hello as well. It gets a little bit lonely talking to myself on these one-way presentations. I should start bringing everybody in, I think, for some atmosphere. But for now, yes, you feel free to say hello, and we'll cover off everything. And I hope everyone gets what they need out of the webinar this evening. So without further ado, let's get the slides on the go. If you haven't logged in for one of the updates before, my name is Jason Swan, and I am an expert when it comes to the Portugal Golden Visa. I actually live in Portugal, and I've been in Portugal now for the past 4 years. Previous to Portugal, I was in Spain for 5 years, and still, embarrassingly, very little Portuguese ability at this point, and my Portuguese skills pretty much still as bad as my Spanish language skills. However, I'm very good with numbers. I'm very good with visa applications, very good with everything that you need to know about moving to Portugal. I'm also a financial planner, both qualified and regulated on a number of topics. So anything that you need advice with regard to moving to Portugal or living in Portugal, whether it be on the visa or the financial planning, please do feel free to ask. And I'm generally a pretty handy person to fire some questions out. By all means, you can check out the website, which is www.jsprive.com. I also try to publish as much information and updates as possible for you to keep abreast of what's happening on the front line in Portugal. I've now advised on over 300 applications for the Golden Visa in Portugal. We maintain a 100% success rate, as I know the Holborn group have now done over 2,000 applications in total. And if you get a chance, please do type my name into Google, have a read through some of our client reviews, and feel free to reach out. As far as what's included, what is it exactly that I do, and what exactly does Holborn do? So we prepare very much a one-stop shop, if you like, for everything that's needed to achieve the Golden Visa, and of course move through to citizenship if that is your plan after 5 years. All the services that are needed are included. We will, of course, recommend a law firm in Portugal, which will be needed. We'll be accompanying you for your biometrics appointment. We'll be setting up your tax numbers. We'll help set up with your Portuguese bank account. We'll be gathering all the documents that we need. And we'll be doing our very best to keep you calm and stress levels at a minimum whilst we manage all the different moving parts. Not to forget your tax returns as well, which will be needed. Quite a lot of work involved, but yes, you have the pleasure of my company to keep you under control and well informed throughout the process, along of course with my team and the Holborn group. So yeah, let's hope it all goes to plan. And yeah, like I said, if you get a chance, have a look at the website. Now, if you're not focused just on Portugal, it is not the only program that is on offer. If you want to ask me about other EU programs or perhaps international Golden Visa programs, please do feel free to reach out. Of course, we're going to focus just on Portugal this evening, and Portugal is now the last Golden Visa program in Europe where you can actually move towards getting a European passport without actually living in the country. The Spanish program closed a couple of months back. The Malta program closed as well earlier this year. And yes, Portugal now, all eyes are on Portugal as the last route to an EU passport without that minimum 6-month stay. But again, any questions on any programs or just generally getting a second residency or citizenship, feel free to ask. Now, bringing you up to speed on Portugal. Not a lot of news to report this month, but this is by far the standout headline. I must have been asked 50 times this week about what's happening with the change to citizenship. So, of course, there was an announcement last week that the government, well, the announcement on Bloomberg was Portugal has changed the path to 10 years in somewhat of a past tense. However, for anyone that's panicking at this stage, please take this from me that nothing has changed. The law has not changed at this stage. It is only merely a proposal of a potential law change that may come into effect at some point in the not too distant future. But there is going to be a legal process now that follows to debate and discuss whether or not it is a good idea to extend the citizenship timeline from 5 years to 10 years. We're not going to find out a lot more on this topic now until September time. And it is important to know that it's highly, highly unlikely that it's going to affect anybody that has already submitted an application. Certainly if history is anything to go by and the constitutional law of Portugal. But it's safe to assume at this point that as long as you have submitted or you submit your visa application before the law comes into effect, you will still benefit from the 5-year timeline to apply for your passports. As a guide, again, if history is anything to go by, you know, when we saw the law change in 2022, it took 10 months before any new laws came into effect. The final law was wildly different to the one that was proposed at the outset. And again, it is likely to see a similar process this time round. So I can't see any law changes coming into effect this year. In fact, I can almost hang my hat on the fact it will not be this year. So don't panic. But if you are considering the Golden Visa and you would like to make sure you hit the 5-year rule, then it is best practice to get your application submitted ASAP, really. But like I said, no panic just yet. Other than that, some good news, which I did report last month, but the confirmation has now been received from AIMA that Golden Visa applicants, should they wish, can reside in Portugal following the submission of their visa application. There is, of course, a period of time that we need to wait for the biometrics appointment before the visa is issued. However, as long as we can evidence that your visa application has been submitted, we can request an extension of the stay that you have to reside in Portugal until you get the visa card, which is great news. So if you can't wait, if you just simply cannot wait to get to Portugal for the visa to arrive, then yes, you can get over now that little bit quicker. And lastly, the again, common question I've been fielding this week is regarding the tax incentives for Golden Visa investors. And this is very good news. It's also a very good indication of the government's intentions moving forward with the Golden Visa program. Of course, we had the recent elections and the government in play now is the same government that was in play before the laws changed and became more restrictive, shall we say, in 2023. And the government now is very much committed to enhancing the Golden Visa program, maybe making things a little bit easier, potentially expanding the investment options to qualify. And now, of course, we're seeing the announcement, a proposal, again, only a proposal at this stage, but to offer Golden Visa investors tax incentives to become tax resident in Portugal and benefit from a 10-year tax exemption on all, well, pretty much all overseas income, including things like dividend income, rental income, and also benefit from a flat rate of income tax should you wish to continue working as well, if you're actually working in Portugal. So it's actually almost identical to the NHR program that we've seen previously, but now something that's proposed exclusively for Golden Visa investors. So more to follow on that. I think it's a great idea. I think we'll find out, like I said, more over the coming months. But keep an eye out for more incentives, as if we needed any more incentives to move to Portugal. Maybe one more to follow on the tax front. But otherwise, no other major headlines this month. If you do want to stay up to date with the latest updates, I will do my very best to provide the latest government announcements and law changes in Portugal. And yeah, any relevant information I think is worth to share, feel free to scan the QR code. It is a free WhatsApp news group. And also, if you wish to subscribe as well, you'll also see a recording of this webinar, actually, amongst previous webinars and other content related to the Golden Visa on YouTube, which you can find at youtube.com/the Golden Visa Guy. Okay, so let's start at the top. So for those that are at the beginning of their Golden Visa journey, allow me to explain exactly what it is. Why is it so popular? Well, the Golden Visa is a 2-year visa, and it gives investors the opportunity to live or work or just sunbathe in Portugal for as long as they like. And you can renew the visa every 2 years, as many times as you like. But after 5 years have passed, you can then apply for a Portuguese passport. You'll be aware that Portugal, of course, is in the EU. And as an EU passport holder, you can then live in any European country without any restrictions. So whether or not you're looking to move to Portugal or perhaps just thinking of a plan B for the future, maybe not kind of decided where to move to just yet, you may decide to simply start the clock ticking to getting a European passport and then kind of decide where to move when that comes through in the future. The Golden Visa is particularly popular for those that don't want to commit to Portugal full time, those that maybe don't want to move to Portugal just yet, or as I mentioned, maybe not even decided to move to Portugal. I'm more thinking just of having options available later in life. And yeah, the minimum stay for the Golden Visa is only 2 weeks every 2 years. As long as you can force yourself to Portugal for just 2 weeks, that will be enough to maintain the visa and then to apply for your passport in 5 years' time. The program was launched in 2012. There's now been over 30,000 applications submitted. And as I mentioned before, it is now the last remaining Golden Visa program in Europe that leads to citizenship without that minimum 6-month stay. So that's what it is. That is what that's what's up for grabs. And as a Golden Visa holder, you benefit from all the what's the word? Benefits, I suppose. You benefit from all the benefits of being a Portuguese citizen, apart from you cannot vote and you cannot run for president. However, you have access to the healthcare system, you have access to the education system as well. And of course, you get to live in Portugal, which is the best part. And of course, the tax incentives, which may be beneficial for some as well. So yeah, like I say, you're treated exactly the same as a Portuguese citizen, apart from you cannot vote and you cannot run for president. And certainly for many of my clients, the healthcare alone can be due course to apply for the visa. Certainly compared to some countries where healthcare can be inherently very expensive. to have access to the public healthcare system in Portugal can be a big plus. So all the above is included with that golden stamp. Now, as I mentioned before, you don't have to move to Portugal. The whole idea is that you can stay where you are and you can have permission to spend more time in Portugal. And of course, you can apply for your passport after 5 years. However, if you are thinking of moving to Portugal, I won't give everyone a big geography lesson at this stage, but it's surprising how many people have never actually been to Portugal that do invest and apply for the visa. But you'll find me down here in the south in a little town called Albufeira, where it's typically a little warmer. The beaches are, in my slightly biased opinion, a little nicer. But you have, of course, the capital of Lisbon, and also Porto up in the north, which I'll be driving to actually in a couple of weeks for a little. I've got a nice spa break booked at the back end of August on a nice vineyard. Actually, I'll get a bit of pampering and maybe a glass of wine. And Porto is very, very different to Lisbon. But you're not going to go far wrong, of course, no matter where you go, I think, in Portugal. It is my personal favorite country in the world. And I'm relatively well traveled as well. But yeah, regardless of where you plan to move, initially, like I said, it's not a plan to move. It is just it is the permission to do so, should you decide to do so in the future. Now, as far as investment criteria, so how do we invest and qualify for the visa? Now, there are 5 categories, if you will. The first category is to create jobs, and you can set up a business in Portugal, or maybe expand an existing business into Portugal. And if you create 10 jobs, you would be rewarded with the Golden Visa. Secondly, if you're feeling generous, you can donate 500,000 euros to the government for their research activities. They will also happily reward you with the Golden Visa, or you can donate 250,000 to the National Arts and Culture. Now, for those that don't fancy the idea of employing 10 members of staff or gifting the money to the government, you can choose from varying different types of investments, and they fall into 2 categories. The first is into some form of venture capital or investment fund. The minimum investment is 500,000 euros. Or you can invest directly into the share capital of a Portuguese company on the basis that that company will maintain or create jobs as a result of your investment. But those are the 2 investment categories which we'll focus on this afternoon. Now, as far as what capital is needed, there are a few variations to those thresholds, if you like. Formally, the minimum capital required to get the visa is if you make a donation of 250,000 euros. And all other levels require all other categories require 500,000 euros. However, as of today's date, there are a small handful of investments that actually pay an upfront return. As an alternative to an annual interest, for example, you can kind of have all the profits paid upfront, to the point where you can actually use those profits towards the 500,000 that has to be invested for the visa. The examples you have on the screen pay an upfront return of 101,000 euros, which is 6 years return, all in one lump sum. It works out about just over 4% per year. And that 101 can be used towards the 500,000, which means only 399 would be required from the investor. The next one down, if you like, very similar investment, but they have an offer of a loan of 50,000 euros. Again, 349 would be required from the investor. And lastly, again, another loan variation and an upfront return, reducing investor capital to a minimum of 325. So for those that are thinking of using as little capital as possible, option 1, of course, is to donate 250. However, if you can stretch to that extra 75,000, you're then in the bracket of making a profit and not losing the capital that you've put to one side. So yeah, but they are the variations as of today's date. I'll come back onto some more specifics shortly. As far as who can qualify for the Golden Visa, so everyone can apply, as long as you don't already have an EU passport. If you do have an EU passport, you wouldn't need the visa anyway. But you do need to have a clean criminal record, as long as as long as it's relatively clean. We have had success with applications with DUIs in the past, or more minor offences in the distant past. But in the main, you're going to have a relatively clean criminal record. You need to, of course, make an eligible investment in line with the government's requirements. And again, the worst part of the deal is you have to come to Portugal. And you've got to force yourself to Portugal for 14 days every 2 years. You can do that all in one go, or you can split it into multiple trips. But that's it. As long as you can commit to those 4 rules, there's no other requirements. There's no other restrictions. Of course, we will be checking some of these things before you commit to any investment as well. We do maintain a flawless success rate on our applications, largely because the rules are very simple, but also because we will, of course, carry out these checks before we start the process. And as far as family members, you can include as many family members as you like. And best practice, you want to try and get the best value for money as you can, really. And where possible, get as many family members to have the visa and to have access to the healthcare and the education, all on the same investment. Now, for the structure of an application, there is one main applicant, and that person can have their family members added, as long as they come under the category of their spouse, whether married or unmarried is fine. Parents above the age of 65 can be included as well, and children up to the age of 21. Again, automatically assumed as dependent in Portugal up until that age. If children are older than 21, it may still be possible to add them, but we'll need to do it. We do need to prove some form of dependency after 21. And the same for parents. And also we can change who is the main applicant. So, for example, it may make more sense to add your son or your daughter as the main applicant than to have you as their beneficiaries. That could perhaps then allow your grandchildren to go on the application and things like this. You can't have brothers or sisters. You can't have colleagues. You can't have friends. You can't have pets. But as long as you've got children, partner, or parents, you can have as many people as you like on the application. Now, the process from start to finish is a bit of a busy slide. Not really too much to worry about in here, but this is really what goes on behind the scenes from start to finish, and ultimately what we need to do in order to get the visa in your hands. Now, it all begins, of course, with a discussion. Book some time in, and we'll talk through your requirements, your timeline, and we'll start to, of course, go through your answers and provide the personalized information you need to work out if the Golden Visa is something that you want to do. If you do wish to proceed with an application, then you'll then select an appropriate investment, and we'll then begin with your tax numbers, which is the first thing that will get set up, quickly followed then by setting up your bank account in Portugal. You'll need both of those things before you can do much at all, really, in Portugal. But the bank account does take some time, on average anywhere between 4 to 8 weeks to have the bank account open and ready to receive funds. But whilst we wait for the bank account, we'll start to gather all the documents that we need for your application. So things like marriage certificates, birth certificates, passport copies, proof of address, FBI reports, or criminal record certificates. And of course, gather any necessary information required by the bank or the attorneys or the tax office accordingly. And like I said, as soon as the bank account is open, you can then transfer the investment funds to your new Portuguese bank account. And then once the investment contracts have been completed with your attorney, you'll then complete the investment, and we can then submit your application. And it's submitted online on the AIMA portal. And it's at that day that the 5-year clock will then begin to tick towards applying for your passport. And also that day is when you will be protected by the laws that are in play on that day. So any future changes, such as the closure of the Golden Visa program, or change to the citizenship timeline, or change to investment criteria, any future changes won't affect your application from that date. So that's the key milestone, if you like. Now, once we've submitted your application, we'll then wait for your biometrics appointment to be assigned in Portugal, more often than not in Lisbon. And that'll be the first time that we physically need you in Portugal as part of the process. Everything until that point is done remotely. We will be there to accompany you on the day and make sure that the appointment goes to plan and that you're well prepared. It is a pretty boring day, very long day. Probably will be the worst day of your holiday into Portugal, queuing up for AIMA. But unfortunately, we can't do your fingerprints or your photo. So we'll do our best to entertain you on the day. But more importantly, of course, make sure that it all goes to plan, because shortly after that appointment, we will expect to receive your visa card, which looks a little bit like this one here at the bottom. But that's it. That's all. Piece of cake. Piece of cake. But of course, once we submit the application, once we've got the visa card, you're then on the pathway towards citizenship. So as a brief recap, we'll have up to 3 months to submit the application. We'll then have approximately 12 to 18 months to wait for the biometrics. It is difficult to say exactly how long it will take to receive the biometrics appointment from AIMA. It does seem to vary per application. The fastest that we've seen this year, we had a client we submitted an application in February. It was accepted in April, and the whole family was booked in for the biometrics in July. It's a very fast turnaround time. Others have been waiting longer, but on average at the moment, we would set your expectations at around 12 to 18 months from when we submit your application. Not forgetting, of course, that if you're too excited to get to Portugal and can't wait for those 18 months, then you can reside in Portugal before the visa comes through. Also, the 5-year clock, as I mentioned, begins to tick from when we submit the application as well. That change came into effect last year. It used to be 5 years from when we apply for the passport. Sorry, it used to be 5 years from when we receive the visa, but now it's 5 years from when we submit the application for visa. But then, so once we have the visa, it will last for 2 years. We'll do one renewal thereafter. It will last for another 2 years. We'll do a second renewal in around about 5 years from now. At the same time, we will apply for your permanent residency and citizenship. It's worth noting as well that the potential changes to the citizenship timeline are not linked to the timeline to permanent residency as well. So that part isn't due to change. But all being well, like I said, as long as you have kept a clean criminal record and you've done better than me at learning some Portuguese, you'll be able to apply for your passport 5 years down the line. And I can actually apply for my passport next year. But I think I'm probably going to need another 5 years to pass the language test. But we'll see how we go. But yeah, that's the path. That's the goal. And once we're all done, that is it. Mission complete. You then have officially the 4th best passport in the world. I can't remember what is the first, second, and third. But it is based on, of course, the ultimate freedom that you have. I mean, you have, of course, the right to live in any European country, as we mentioned before, and also the right to travel to 190 countries visa-free worldwide. Now, for the majority of people listening in now from the US and those from the UK, we kind of already have that freedom to travel visa-free, fortunately. But for some nationalities, it can be very difficult to go on holiday. So, of course, having a European passport can make life a lot easier for general travel as well. But other than that, that is the program. That is the Golden Visa program. So thank you for your questions so far. Host has disabled chat. My apologies. Have I disabled the chat? Didn't mean to disable the chat. I don't actually do the settings. Someone does it for me. But questions are coming in, so that's good. So I will certainly come on to the questions shortly. What I'm going to do shortly, sorry, what I'm going to do in the meantime, allow me just to go through again the detail as far as different how to qualify with the investments, and then shortly we'll come on 10 15 minutes or so. We'll come on to some questions and make sure we cover everything up. Okay, quick note on the tax front. I know I mentioned about tax for golden visa applicants earlier. There is also the introduction of NHR 2.0, which is almost identical to what we covered also before. But and again, any questions that you have around taxes or tax planning or financial planning, please do just reach out, and we'll cover that off separately as well. We can talk through which bits may or may not be beneficial. But let's talk about the rules of investing for a golden visa. So for those that are looking to qualify with some form of investment fund or venture capital fund, there are really 4/5 rules that the fund has to abide by in order to qualify for the visa. And they are as follows. So the fund has to, first of all, be regulated and approved in Portugal. And secondly, the fund cannot invest into real estate of any kind. That came into effect 2023. The fund must invest at least 60% of its capital into Portugal as well. So you've got to have a Portuguese fund manager that is investing predominantly into Portugal. You couldn't have a US fund, for example, that invests into Portugal. Likewise, you couldn't have a Portuguese fund that puts everything into a US tracker. For example, you're going to have a Portuguese fund regulated by the CMVM, which is the regulatory body, and predominantly investing or keeping the money in Portugal as well. As we covered before, the minimum subscription is 500,000 euros. And the last one is more best practice, really. Formally, you don't need to have an investment to apply for a passport. However, you do need to have a valid visa. And of course, you can only renew a visa if you have maintained an investment. Now, all being well, there will only be 2 renewals required until when you can apply for your passport. But it is best practice to invest into something that will allow you to remain invested for as long as you need to make sure that you've got the passport in your hand. So yeah, just something to bear in mind on that front. Otherwise, yeah, of course, when you are researching and looking at different funds, always be sure as to what the investment is. Naturally, we will make sure that you have all the key facts over any potential investment funds that you're considering. If you was to take the visa out of the equation, the chances are, you wouldn't be looking to invest 500,000 euros into Portugal right now. Portugal is not, the financial system is not as robust as the likes of the US or the UK. And although there's nothing wrong with investing in Portugal, you need to be clear on exactly what it is that you're investing into, and of course understand the risk involved with those investments as well. So where possible, we'll assess the security of your capital. There are some investments whereas you can have a tangible asset held as additional security, whilst you're invested in the fund, for example. You need to be mindful of kind of how long the capital is tied up for. Some funds will have penalties payable if you withdraw the money before 10, sometimes 14 years from now. Realistically, you're only going to need the investment for around 6 years. So just bear in mind that if you're tied into the fund for 10 years, that may become frustrating later on. But also be mindful of fees, setup fees, management fees, exit fees. Portuguese funds are notoriously quite expensive compared to other parts of the world. But I personally don't mind paying fees as long as they're justified. But not always the case. Not just with Portuguese funds, I suppose, with any funds. But make sure you understand clearly what those fees are. If you are from the US, it's important to check if the fund is compliant for US nationals. As a US citizen, you will have to, or should I say, institution will have to uphold the sector reporting requirements back to the US. And not all banks or institutions are willing or able to uphold those requirements for US nationals, which can make life a little bit tricky when it comes to tax time, if not. So again, we'll make sure we explore these facts before you make any investments, and where possible, always explore if there's any other incentives on offer. Sometimes fund managers will offer, you know, a discount towards legal fees, or sometimes a complimentary stay in Portugal, things like this. But just some general housekeeping on that front. Otherwise, there's no restrictions on which industries that you can invest into. These are some of the more prominent sectors in Portugal to choose from. You'll hear me talking a lot about tourism and hospitality, but there's no restrictions there. And as a kind of a bird's eye view, if you like, on the spectrum of funds currently in Portugal that will qualify for a visa, there are approximately 30 funds out there with different fund managers. They come in all different shapes and sizes, from low risk to exceptionally high risk. The lock-in periods can vary from no lock-in at all to, as I mentioned, up to 14 years. Setup fees and annual management fees can vary from none at all up to 3%. Some funds, more adventurous funds, will target over 15% per year. Fixed investments, you would expect around 4%. And as I mentioned, there are one or two that will qualify, and asset investment option as well. But otherwise, yeah, like I said, very, very brief snapshot. These are some of the more commonly known fund managers in Portugal. We're not here to, you know, we're not here to kind of advise on funds, but we can share with you, you know, what funds are out there. We can share with you what other investors are choosing. I generally find about 90% of our clients seem to choose from about 10% of the funds that are out there. There seem to be 3, 4, maybe 5 particularly popular funds. But yeah, of course, during a Zoom meeting, you know, happy to review the different funds that are out there. As a quick example of what a fixed investment can look like, at the moment, there is an option to fix the returns. If you don't fancy the idea of backing Portuguese stock markets for the next 6 years, you may prefer just to know exactly what's going to come back out. And it's the one I referred to earlier with the upfront return, where you actually get all the returns upfront for 101,000 euros. You can use that towards the 500,000 that's required for the visa. So only 399 needed from the investor, and it has a fixed exit from year 6 of 500,000 euros. Very simply, 399 goes in, and 500,000 euros comes back out again from year 6. There are some loan options as well with the provider, one of 50,000, one of 74,000. So again, it can be done with a fixed profit and an investment capital of as little as 325,000 euros. Otherwise, yeah, it does have, again, there's a tangible asset held as a security whilst you're invested. And yes, it's nice to have. You actually get a complimentary stay in Portugal each year as well. They'll actually cover the cost of accommodation to help with your minimum stay. Of course, it's only 2 weeks that you need every 2 years for the visa, but the investment provider offers 4 weeks accommodation courteously each year as well. So probably not something that would influence an investment decision, but certainly a nice to have as well. So otherwise, you know, investment funds, you know, traditional equity funds, like I said before, vary in shapes and size. I've got on the screen 2 examples of probably the 2 most commonly requested funds. One is with the largest fund manager in Portugal, managing over 4 billion euros. That invest collectively into different sectors, this time over technology, AI, healthcare. The fund manager's been around for over 30 years. They target returns in excess of 10% per year. And of course, with that comes the possibility of the value going up as well as down, of course, as well. But you can assess past performance to help make an educated decision on the fund. And likewise, yeah, another similar investment, again, with another very large fund manager in Portugal, investing into different sectors, again, targeting 8 to 12% per year and a long track record as well. You can split money between funds, if you will, as long as you can meet the minimum capital requirement for the fund manager, then that's not a problem. But there you go. Like I say, super quick snapshot. The funds regularly change during a one-to-one meeting. We can send to you different options that are available at that time and gather the information that you need. But in all the cases, of course, for making any big investment decisions, always speak to an expert. There's a very handsome picture of me there on the screen. I think I'm referring to myself as the expert there, but please do feel free to reach out. And although I'm covering quite top level detail on the program, of course, during a one-to-one meeting, we can go through personalized costs. We can go through personal questions, maybe not suitable for a public forum, and help you get on your way, or at least work out if it is something that you want to do. But otherwise, before we jump into some questions, if you do want to get a head start on your Portuguese, then you might want to just make a note of the screen at the moment, because for all applications submitted before the end of July, you can request a complimentary online tutor, complimentary, of Holborn assets. And you need to remember to ask me about this offer when you book some time in to speak. But with the application, you get a 12-week language course included to help you pass the A2 language exam that will be needed to apply for your passport as well. So there you go. Let's see if you can pass Portuguese in 3 months. Some clients have. I certainly didn't, but I've never been very good with languages. But nonetheless, I think that brings us up to a close. Thank you for listening. And if you do want to book any time in, you can scan the QR code and you can request some time to go through any personal documentation or questions following the event this evening. I hope that was helpful. Everyone, I've gone pretty fast there. I've covered literally everything that you need to know about the Golden Visa in 44 minutes. I don't think it's bad going, but thank you for the questions that have come out. There are some questions that were submitted as well before we started, but yeah, we've got a bit of time now. So if anyone would like me to recap on any of the slides that we've covered, or have any questions, then you can drop them into the chat box, and we can cover them off now. Hi there, Dan. Wisconsin, USA. Americans don't have sex. Sorry if I offended you there, Dan. Hi, Suzanne. Texan, currently visiting in Ireland. Hi there. Yes, hello. How's Ireland? I guess an island probably similar to Manchester at the moment. A little different from Texas, though, Suzanne. Hope you're having a good time. Hi there, Tracy. Screen says hosted disabled chat. Yeah, sorry about that. I think instead of the chat box, we might have the question box in this format. So feel free to drop your questions in on the Q&A section. Hi there, Claudio. Claudio. Apologies my pronunciation. Can you further elaborate on being a haven for investment? What may you be referring to there, Claudio? Could you elaborate on your question, Claudio? Not too sure what you mean there as far as a haven as such. Could you just drop another question in for me? I'll come back to you in a moment. Hi there, Suzanne. What would the currently proposed increased language requirement and cultural tests apply to Golden Visa holders when they apply to citizenship? Not if you've already submitted your application, Suzanne. So yeah, if you're already underway, then the changes, which include the timeline extension from 5 to 10 years and the additional cultural tests on top of the language exam, will only apply proactively. So only for new applications following the law coming into effect. So yeah, as long as you've already submitted or you submit, this year, then yeah, you should be okay without having to do the cultural test. Hi, Claudio. Does Portugal limit the applications they approve per year? Good question. No, not as far as I'm aware, Claudio. It's certainly not something that's published. I don't think so. No, there's increasing numbers of applications submitted and increasing numbers of applications approved every year. So if there is a limit, it certainly hasn't been hit just yet. I know, as I mentioned before, the government is very pro Golden Visa as well. So they will be, they will likely be, um, offering even more incentives to investors, I think, as time goes on. It is a big part of their plans for Portugal. They very much value the importance of overseas investment and, of course, immigration. So no limits just yet. We're okay so far. Hi, Jason. Thanks for the update. I applied through Holborn in May 2023. In January 2025, I was contacted to update my FBI report and scheduled the biometrics. My paperwork was uploaded in April. More than 90 days have passed. Can you give an opinion on this? On that case, Mr. and Mrs. Basker, if you just want to send me an email, and I'll get a full update on your application for you. I don't think it's me personally that's looking after your application there. You mentioned Pablo, but I'll liaise with Pablo for you. We can also liaise, of course, with the attorneys and get a full update on the application. No problem. But yeah, just drop me a message and we'll come back to you on that. Hi there, Tammy. Can you give an estimate for the costs of the process? So costs really break down into two categories. You have legal fees and you have government fees. Legal fees vary on a few factors. Depends on how many family members to be included, and of course how you wish to qualify for the visa, whether it's through the job creation or an investment or a donation. But we go through that, Tammy, at our first meeting. So once I've got some basic information, I can bring up the costs for you on the screen. Now I can run you through exactly what to expect, not just during the application, but also right through towards citizenship as well. The government fees remain the same regardless. It works out at approximately €7,000 per person in initial government fees, the Golden Visa. The renewal fees, you have at the moment very, very small government fees for the renewal. It's only costing €84 per person. But yeah, all in all, Tammy, I'd say book some time in and yeah, we'll go through that together once I've got some basic details. I hope that gives you a bit of an idea for now. Okay, when the investment is liquidated at the end, after the citizenship is obtained, what is the face value received if someone invested 399? So I assume, Mr. and Mrs. Basker, that you're thinking of the one we looked at before. So in that case, there's a fixed exit. So after 6 years, you receive a fixed €500,000. You have 399 that goes in, and 500 that comes back out later on. It is actually a forward contract. So you have a kind of a predetermined sale of your shares, if you like. But you can also remain invested. So, it's optional for the investor whether or not you want to take that 500,000. Of course, if it doesn't make sense at the time, you can remain invested with a view to, to generate more profits over that time. Hi there, Suzanne. Your slide says the investment needs to be kept during the whole Golden Visa process until permanent residency or citizenship is acquired. Do you mean until the actual passport is in hand? I thought it only needed to be held until the time of passport eligibility. Yes, you are, Suzanne. I think I may have elaborated on that since you posted your question as well. But yes, very true. You don't need an investment to apply for a passport. You just need an investment for a visa, and you need a valid visa to apply for the passport. So in the event of any delays receiving your passport, and if we did need to do a third visa renewal, for example, it's important, of course, that you have remained invested, because if you weren't invested, you wouldn't be able to renew the visa and subsequently would jeopardize your passport application. So you are correct. So you don't formally need the visa for a passport application. but it is best practice for visa renewal. Hi there, Claudia. Thank you. So what is your company's fees for the whole process? So again, as I mentioned just a moment ago there, Claudia, yeah, book in some time. We'll go through personalized costs, and we can look at the size of your family and how you wish to qualify. And of course, following that meeting, I'm able to email that all to you as well, with everything that you need. Your slide mentioned it in the very beginning about something to do with a haven. I don't remember talking about a haven, Claudia. You'll have to excuse me. If you can just clarify what your question was regarding an investment haven, and I can maybe elaborate on that for you a little, or we can go back. We've got to post it again now. Let's have a look. So the investment of fund, if the investment of fund that you collect loses value over the period, are you on the hook for keeping the investment at 500,000 euros? Or only proof of the initial investment is sufficient? Very good question, Claudia. And you'll be pleased to know that we just need to evidence that the 500,000 has been invested, because it's almost, apart from if you have a fixed investment, it's almost impossible. It is impossible to guarantee the value of an investment fund to be above 500,000 at all times. So yeah, you'll be pleased to know you don't have to do that. As long as we can evidence that 500,000 was invested, that will be fine. And yeah, as long as, of course, you choose the investment wisely, Claudio, hopefully, you won't have to worry about it going below the 500,000. But if it did, your visa would be okay. Hi there, Jeff. Does the 5 years to citizenship start from the visa application or the visa approval? Good question, Jeff. The 5 years will begin from your visa application. And that change came into effect earlier last year. It did used to be 5 years from when you received the visa, which was actually close to 6 or 7 years. But now it's five years from the date of your visa submission. So even if it did take 12, 18 months to get the visa, you would then only have 3.5 to 4 years left before we can apply for your passport. So yeah, maximum 5 years up until that time. Good question, though. Thank you for your questions. So other than that, I'm just going to jump into some that were submitted before we started the team. We've just got a couple of minutes left if anyone would like to drop in any questions. Otherwise, yeah, if you want to go into more personalized detail, you've got my contact details there on the screen. Oh. Will I be able to bring my 2 cats? I wonder if that was a serious question. Hi there, Rosalind. Will I be able to bring my 2 cats? You can bring as many cats as you like. You don't even need to put them on the visa, Rosalind. You might need to get them a passport, maybe a cat passport, but you'll be okay. You can bring your cats, no problem. Hi there, Bill. What are the requirements and advantages of dual French and American citizens? Not sure on that question there. Not sure what that means. If you do have a French passport, Bill, you won't need a Portuguese one. You'll already be able to live in Portugal. But yeah, if you do want more specifics on that, please drop me a message. Hi there, Lucy. When does one get access to the public health coverage in Portugal? And what health insurance do you recommend in the meantime? So Lucy, yeah, you get access to the healthcare system as soon as your visa is issued. As soon as that card is in your hand, you get access to the healthcare system and the education system. And yeah, formally, the Portuguese do have one of the highest rated healthcare systems in Europe. I wasn't too impressed personally when I've been there. I know there's quite long wait times, but for free healthcare, I think you cannot grumble too much, and yeah, you can take advantage of that as soon as you get your visa card. Hi there, Holly. If I'm not planning to move for another 10 years, is it too early to begin looking into this now? So as a quick recap, Holly, so the Golden Visa it's not designed really for those that are moving to Portugal right now. It's actually, it's designed for people that are moving in the future or may move in the future. because of course the minimum stay is only 2 weeks every 2 years. So the idea is that you can stay living in the country that you're in now, and start the clock ticking for 5 years to get a passport for Europe. And when you've got that passport, you can then live in any European country. So yeah, even if you're not looking to move away from where are you? You're over in Barrytown. Barrytown. I know where Barrytown is. But even if you're staying in Barrytown for the next 10 years, Holly, then yes, you can. Yeah, the Golden Visa works really well. As long as there's 5 years between now and when you want to move to Europe, that will give you plenty of time to get the passport in advance. Okay, hi there, Epic from the USA. What kinds of investments and kinds of IRAs that qualify? May I apply for the visa prior to holding the equities for 5 years? So we covered off the kinds of investment. So as far as IRAs, we do have a number of clients that have used retirement accounts to fund their investment in Portugal as a way to qualify for the visa, and without having to make a physical withdrawal from the retirement account, they've funded it directly from within the retirement account. And yes, it's not something that we provide advice on as such, but I can put you in touch with somebody that in the US that can give you the guidance on what needs to be done on the US side before getting everything sent over to Portugal. And yeah, that may be possible, you know, to use the IRA as a source of investment capital. Hopefully that answers your question, Pete. In short, yeah, I'd say book some time in. We can make sure I've got a clear understanding of your question. Hi there, Suzanne. Thank you for your question. Yeah, so I think we've covered that now, haven't we? So you mentioned about moving in 3 months. And yeah, so the idea behind that is that it takes up to about 3 months to submit an application, which gives us enough time to set up your tax numbers, get your bank account ready, get all the documents together, to make an investment and to submit your application. And once you've submitted the application, you then have the right to reside in Portugal. So instead of waiting for those 12 to 18 months, you want to get over here straight away, then you can have that option. Okay, so other than that, we've got some more questions coming in live, and then I think we'll finish off for this evening. Thank you for everyone who submitted your questions so far. Okay, do you know, hi Suzanne, do you know which applications are currently being processed? You mentioned some that applied in February. I know of others who applied in 2023 and are still waiting. Yeah, it does seem to be very ad hoc, really, Suzanne. Yeah, we see some applications done very quickly, others actually take closer to the 18 months. People that applied, I mean, you'll see online that there's still people waiting from before 2023. Well, I think it was back in 2021, 2022, there was a problem with SEF's online portal, and there was a 3-month period where no lawyers in Portugal could upload new applications to the portal, and it caused absolute chaos. There was applications lost. There was people sent to the beginning of the queue. It was very difficult, and some people did get tied up in that if they submitted an application before 2022. But for those kind of 2023 onwards, yeah, it is very much just a waiting game. Some applications do seem to go through super fast. Others do take a little bit longer. If clients have been waiting over, you know, what is fair, if there are significant delays, then it is possible to, you know, to press AIMA from a legal perspective, which has had some success with speeding up applications as well. But yeah, at the moment for new applications, we're confident behind that kind of 12 to 18 months. Hopefully that helps somewhat. Do Golden Visa holders have to purchase the private healthcare as do other residency visa holders? And no, you don't, Sugan. You only need the healthcare if you physically move to Portugal. Of course, the Golden Visa, well, you're not going to be living in Portugal with the Golden Visa, so no, you don't need to purchase the private healthcare. Always a good idea, of course, but I'm sure you'll have that back home. And how do you qualify for Portuguese healthcare without a Portuguese address? And if you have a Portuguese address, doesn't that mean you are a Portugal tax resident? Very good questions. So the first question, Suzanne, so again, you don't need Portuguese healthcare unless you live in Portugal. So that answers the first question. If you have a Portuguese address, that does not, I will highlight, if I could flash this on the screen, I would, but having a Portuguese address does not make you tax resident. Other things that do not make you tax resident is a Golden Visa does not make you tax resident. A passport does not make you tax resident. The only thing that makes you tax resident in Portugal is your physical person spending over 6 months of the year in Portugal. So even if you have a visa, a passport, or 10 houses in Portugal, you will only be tax resident if you spend over 6 months of the year in the country. So the answer to your question, Suzanne, is no, it does not make you tax resident. I think I elaborated that point enough there, but it is probably one of the most common questions. There's a common misconception that getting a visa means you're going to pay taxes in Portugal. And the reason that comes up a lot is that the US, of course, taxes its citizens. And I think there's only 2 countries in the world that taxes its citizens rather than its residents. But I'm sure you'll be well aware that even if you move away from the US, you'll still be paying taxes back to the US, which is very, very uncommon in the rest of the world. Actually, in Europe, you're taxed based on where you are resident, where you are physically resident, not based on which passport that you have. So it's often thought that, getting a Portuguese passport means more tax, but that is not the case. And Portugal does have a tax treaty in place with the majority of first world countries across the world, including the US, including the UK. So you won't be double taxed on your income, but you may find that when you move to Portugal, you could end up paying some tax in both countries, but it won't be double tax. It will just be the effective highest rate of tax between those 2 countries. Hi, Jeff. For US citizens, does Portugal also tax gains from the required investment fund? Good question. So US citizens, does Portugal tax gains from the required investment fund? So it depends on the fund, Jeff, but in the large, no. You'll be taxed where you are tax resident, unless there's any withholding tax payable, which is very uncommon. Then no, you will not pay tax in Portugal. You will pay tax in the US, and you will declare those returns on your tax return. Of course, if you live in Portugal as a US citizen, yes, you will pay tax in Portugal. But if you're not living in Portugal, you won't pay tax in Portugal. Hi there, Tracy. Once the application is submitted, can person live in Portugal? Can one live in Portugal during visa processing? Trying to understand how quickly one can move to Portugal. So yes, that is correct, Tracy. You can submit the application and you can submit on a Monday and you can fly out on a Tuesday and you can be on a sunbed for Wednesday. And you can stay on the sunbed until you've either burnt to a crisp or your visa application has been accepted. So yes, you can, and I have that in writing from AIMA. It was a request that I submitted to AIMA a couple of weeks back to query this, and we have it in writing from AIMA to clarify that you can reside in Portugal following the submission of your visa. There are a couple of very small caveats to that, but yes, you can reside as quickly as you like, Tracy. So if you do want to obviously go through that in more detail, again, book some time in and be happy to oblige. But yes, you can come as soon as you like. Hi there, Andrea. Do you automatically relinquish your original citizenship after the passport is received? No, you don't. Well, depending on which nationality that you are, of course, Andrea, I mean, the majority of countries will allow dual nationality. So in the US, for example, in the UK, you can have both passports. You would have your original citizenship and then a second citizenship, and you'll become a dual citizen in both of those countries. And you do not have to relinquish your original citizenship in that example. Some countries you cannot have dual residency or dual citizenship, should I say, where you would need to sacrifice one passport for the other. In those cases, we generally encourage keeping your original passport and then simply to apply for permanent residency in Portugal. You know, if you can't have dual nationality, but yeah, in the main, you'll keep both. Hi there, Jeff. If I'm allowed to live in Portugal during the entire time of the application process, am I free to live anywhere in Europe during that time? Well, that would be good, Jeff. But yeah, you're pushing your luck a little bit there. Unfortunately, not. That would be great, wouldn't it? But no, it is only for Portugal. Well, I say that you can still travel to Europe. You still have 3 months at a time in Europe without the need for a visa. But the result the can't get my words out now. The right to reside permanently will only be specific to Portugal. And the same will apply throughout the visa period as well. And it's only when you get the passport when you then have that access to live in other European countries. But it's always worth asking, Jeff, isn't it? It's always worth asking. Okay, so hi there, Mr. and Mrs. Basker. How long is it reasonable to wait before starting the legal avenue with AIMA? Well, to do that, we need to demonstrate that there have been unacceptable and uncommon delays. And there isn't really a black and white timeline as to when we do that. But we would very much review it on a case-by-case basis. It depends on what communications have been received, if there was any reason for the delays and things like this. But you know, if it gets to the point of extended delays, then yes, we'd have that discussion. So hopefully that helps somewhat. But there isn't a set timeline as such. But yeah, you can start that at any time. It's ultimately your decision if you want to add additional pressure to AIMA. But of course, the attorneys will guide you as to whether or not it is likely to be successful based on the details of your application. Hi there, Suzanne. Please remind me, was the 20% flat tax for Golden Visa holders the current law or a proposed change? It is a proposed change, Suzanne. Yes, it is a proposal very similar to the proposal for the extension of 10 years. It is a proposal from the government which will follow now many debates, and ultimately we'll probably find out more towards the end of the year. But yeah, more to follow on that. There are other tax regimes as well, which will allow a 20% flat tax, like NHR 2.0. But again, all the above will only apply in the event of being tax resident in Portugal. But yes, more news to follow on that, Suzanne. I may have potentially more of an update on that during the August update. But feel free to check in periodically to see when that comes in. Okay, I read that a Portuguese citizen with a property in Portugal is treated as a tax resident from the date they land and not wait for the 180-day rule. Is that correct? There may be some context around that. If you plan to live in Portugal full time, then you can declare yourself a tax resident of Portugal from day one. By definition, you don't become a tax resident on day one because you own a property in Portugal. But you can, and often may make sense to declare yourself tax resident from day one. That's something that I did when I moved to Portugal. But without that declaration, then ultimately, yeah, by definition, you have to have been in Portugal for 183 days to be tax resident. So yeah, maybe a bit of context around that, and hopefully that makes sense. But otherwise, I think we'll wrap up. Everyone, thank you very much for your questions. I hope that was helpful. I will keep everyone up to date with, of course, the next update, which will be in August. Now, I'm going to be traveling a little bit in August, but I'll be somewhere in the world. I should be in Portugal again. Yeah, I'll be maybe in the north of Portugal next time, but I'll keep everyone up to date with any key updates. If you do want to, like I said, check out the website, you're very welcome to do so. You'll see my latest publications on there and details, of course, of upcoming events as well. But thank you for everyone for joining. Some really good questions. And if we don't speak to you beforehand, I look forward to seeing you in Portugal very soon. All the best for now. Thank you.